fun-loving, full of life, a beautiful woman. Just a few words to describe Pauline Underhill, who on February the 11th, 2021, lost her short battle with cervical cancer. A partner, a mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, a daughter, a friend. Bomb-proof is how Tony describes her. The only thing they ever argued about was going for her smear test, and to this day Tony can't comprehend why she always refused to go. Perhaps, he said, out of fear of, or fearing the worst. Now they say ignorance is bliss, but in this case it was fatal. We know that over 850 women each year die from cervical cancer. Now that's over 2 a day. We also know that it's curable if caught early. Now, looking back, his one regret is that he wasn't tough enough. And if he could only turn the clock back, he would have literally carried her there and risked their relationship if it meant saving her life. His message, therefore, to us today as women is to just do it. Just go. Get it done. To all partners and friends of women, hold their hand and take them, knowing it could be the greatest act of kindness you could ever give, to save the pain and heartache that comes with this. So listen to Tony's story and make up your own mind. And he says, by sharing this story, if it just saves one life, then it's been worth it. So, Tony, it's so lovely to see you. We go back how far? I can't remember now when the last time was that we saw each other.
Probably 30 years when we first engaged.
Geez, okay. So that is a long time. So out of the blue, you contacted me for a very important reason, and that was to talk about something really important to you and about a very, very special person to you. Tell us a little bit about, or tell me about Pauline and why you wanted to speak to me.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Pauline and I got together on her 40th birthday, which was some 26, 27 years ago now. Second time round for both of us, it has to be said, and these things happen, as we all know. I met her, as you do, in a bar. I'm sure that will come as a huge surprise to you.
Can't do that anymore.
And just one of those people that fascinated me from day one. Very, very full of life, a very beautiful one, so we
captivated you.
Captivated, yeah. I mean, I use the word fascinating, and she did, because she completely drew me in. And I just going through a separation, a divorce, and she'd already gone through it. And you go through that thing where do I really want to be involved seriously again? And we got to the point very quickly where the answer was yes. We'd spoken about marriage, but that's all we did. We spoke about it. It just never happened. We just never saw the reason to make it happen. And then the kids started arriving, and then we moved into a house. So this tribe. So from that time, all the kids got treated as our children, and it just worked. It just worked. We became this strange nomadic bunch. Which worked beautifully. Yeah. So, and the reason that I reached out to you was, unfortunately, in February this year, on February the 11th, Pauline passed away from cervical cancer. This is someone in the 27 years that I'd known her, was completely bomb-proof, as women quite often are. Not so much as a cold or a cough or anything. I mean, just completely. And just had this wonderful outlook on life, and was just breezed through life, and then suddenly.
So a hell of a shock, a real complete bombshell out of the blue. But how out of the blue was this?
Oh, it was completely. As I said, she was completely bomb-proof. We'd moved to the house that I'm now in. This was going to be our forever house. As I said, she'd never had an issue with any health or anything else. And in probably late probably late February, March 2020, she thought she got picked up a water infection, or she thought she got a water infection. Called the doctor, all symptoms seemed to indicate that that's what it was. And the doctor said, yeah, okay, take some antibiotics or whatever and see how it goes. It wasn't getting any better. So, we decided that we needed to get her to see a doctor. And obviously, this is just pre-COVID. So you can imagine.
Yeah.
Then, of course, COVID struck. And so we went into a little bit of a lockdown. And then she started to get, it's probably sort of March, April time, she started to get a bleed, which clearly in a woman of her age was not right.
Yeah.
And so, right, okay.
So let's remind ourselves of Pauline was 66, did you say?
At that time she would have been 64, 65.
Right. Okay.
So that was the first thing. Then she started to get pain in her legs.
Right.
So you start to add all of this together, and as always with her, she'd go, "Oh, my legs are aching. I wish this bloody bleed would go away," and this sort of stuff. And her son Brian lives down in Devon, and we'd gone down sort of as we could at sort of May time as they started to ease lockdown. We could go down to Devon to see him and his wife and the grandkid Elsie. And all the way back from Devon, she was really in some difficulty with this pain in her legs. So I said, look, when we get home, let's get you into a doctor straight away. So I called the GP and bring her in. And the GP at first said, I think you've got something, there's something not right. I mean, clearly not right. We need to get you into a hospital to get some tests. So they booked her into Burton District Hospital, and she went up there. And in typical Pauline fashion, she didn't want to cause a fuss. She said, I don't want you to come with me because you'll be fussing. You'll be fussing and driving everybody mad. I'll get Kim to take me. Okay, I think you better ask Kim first. But anyway, off they went to Burton District, did some tests. And the first thing that came out was the thing that was causing pain in her legs was actually DVT.
Right.
Okay, and so the question to her then from the specialist team up there was, normally this is only DVT in your legs is normally caused by a lot of long haul flying, and so they said there's something causing this, and so they did some more tests. Then they did a full MRI scan, and they went, what you have is a very, very large tumour, which is pushing onto the veins and causing the DVT.
Right.
So we need to understand. So obviously more tests.
Were you there with her when that was?
No. She insisted that this was this was a ladies only event, and believe me, the force of nature that was Pauline, that's what she wanted to do.
Right.
Then clearly they did some more tests. By now she's self-injecting to sort of get rid of the DVT.
Right.
And they came back. It's cancer. It's cervical cancer. We're not sure the stage yet. They think it's stage 2, but it may be stage 4. They need to do some more tests, but they need to start me on chemo as soon as possible. So this was May 2020.
And how did you respond to this when you heard?
I'll be honest with you. When I first heard, cancer is a horrible word, and because none of us really understand it, and this person that this has happened to has been completely bomb-proof. It's head out, and I sort of fell apart. I'm not proud of that, but I did. But
it's human.
And then I got a huge lecture, as you can imagine, saying Debbie's a bloody stupid. And I said, well, okay, provided we all agree that we're going to work through this, whatever it is, we'll work with the medical team, but we are going to work through this. The one thing she insisted is she wanted to control the news agenda as to who knew what. She was quite a protective person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So her view was, well, if lots of people know, they're all going to be affected by this, and I want to keep this away from them. Well, believe me, when you start treatment for cancer, that's actually very difficult to do because there are some quite telling signs.
Right. So what happened?
For the first 6 months, she had chemo every month, and then had to see specialists every month. Chemotherapy, when you first have it, I'm sure you know this, I'm sure people watching this will know this, you get chemo brain, you go quite fuzzy, and she was quite sharp as an individual. So for the first, normally 3 or 4 days, she'd have to take steroids and everything else to help her through it. So she would become quite withdrawn, and you wouldn't want to talk to people and this sort of stuff. So managing that was quite tricky because this is someone who all her life has been very outgoing.
Yeah.
And so now, people are going, well,
So a big change in character and
huge change.
ways of
Yeah.
being. And how did you, I mean, this, you're sitting on the sidelines with no control over this yourself, and
all you
no
have
way
to do
of doing anything.
To help her through this, I and the close family, the kids, and I say Kim Draker, who's been hugely supportive with me through this, we agreed that we would let her do things her way.
Right.
So for the first couple of months, after you got through the 4 days, it wasn't actually too bad. You couldn't tell. But then, of course, after a couple of courses, the scourge of all women happens. She lost her hair.
Right.
And Pauline was quite a glamorous blonde. And suddenly, one of her crowning glories, for want of a better, this is a lady who would not go out, would not leave the house until she'd had her Velcros in for an hour and put a face on and all this.
Right.
So for her to lose her hair, but that was really the only outgoing sign. I mean, she kept her weight, and her shape and everything else, but her confidence was completely gone. And she wouldn't go to supermarkets and shops that she's used for years and years and years. She just would not go. So we had to complete life change. We had to go to far-flung shops so she, so she could get things in. And so we thought that at least things were going along. The reports from the specialist certainly didn't indicate that things were getting worse.
Right.
And because what they do, again, I think you probably know this. After they do the assessment, they send a letter to your GP, but you also get a copy. So there was no hidden motives here. So I knew exactly what was being said, and we got it right and also. So all of that was okay. Got through Christmas. Christmas was quite tricky.
This last Christmas in 2021.
2020. Yeah, 2020. So when she did go out, because it was now December, it was cold, so she could put the woolly hat on and the big coat. And
thankful for small mercies in these situations.
And you really, believe me, you really do go through that. And we tried to get her to try wigs. She just would not go there. She just didn't get on with them. So you deal with all of the what I call the collateral damage that comes with that. But even so, she'd come to the end of the first 6 months. So now it was time for a proper assessment with the oncology team. So in January, I think it was the 25th, she sat down with the specialist. Now, the one thing from the end of December into January and through her treatment in January, there was clearly something going on above and beyond. She was getting very confused. And this is someone who naturally very, very sharp.
Right.
But
so we're only talking about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
we're now just coming into May.
We'd come back from shopping. We'd been up to Tox to Waitrose, so she could do her shopping. And as she came through the door, she fell. And when I say she fell, she just went, almost like she'd collapsed. I managed to get her back up onto her feet into quite a large kitchen here, into the farmhouse kitchen, and she literally just collapsed on the settee. But when she was only away for a few minutes, but when she came round, she had no recollection that this had happened at all. Right. And then she started to get, we'd have a conversation and she would just be confused, happily confused. I understand that from the oncology teams, there are two sorts of confusion. One is where people get aggressive because they can't remember. And the other one, they just get happily confused. So they just sort of laugh it off. Well, we didn't say that, did we? And it started to happen more and more and more. So when they went to the session with the specialist, Burton, on the 25th of Jan, I said to Kim, who went with her, I said, just make sure that they understand that this is where she is mentally. Mm-hmm. He took one look at her. They did some blood tests and took one look at her, and they admitted her to Burton District Hospital for tests, to try and find out what was causing the confusion. Right. Everything seemed to be okay, so they discharged her. So on the 27th, she came home. She clearly wasn't great. So I live in a 3-story house, so the lounge here is on the 2nd floor. So got her into that. I said, look, what you have something to eat. I only want soup. I've been picking all day. I only want soup. So I then found out that the worst thing you can give someone that was in her state was tomato soup. Really? I have a very light coloured lounge. And she managed to eat most of the tomato soup, then deposited it all over the lounge. Wow. Cleaned her up, managed to get her, into bed. since she's the latter.
Tony, this is a massive burden, pressure, weight on your shoulders. This is a sudden. I mean, how are you coping?
Badly. I'll be honest with you. I mean, like you, I have my own business, so I've got that side of it as well, which I pretty well stepped away from.
Right.
Fortunately, because of the way I work, I wasn't being allowed to travel internationally, so at least I could be there. I work from home. My home office is here, so at least I was here.
Yeah.
So anyway, I managed to get her into bed. That was fine. And then, having completely wiped out the lounge, she said, "Oh, could you get me some Lucozade?" So she's lying in bed, gave her the Lucozade, and then of course she demolished the bedroom. So I became.
Was just sort of a random thing, or
yeah? Everything she tried to eat, she just threw up. She went to bed on the night. So this would be the night of the 28th. So a couple of days after they discharged her. About 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday the 29th, I heard an almighty crash.
Right.
And I knew what it was. Like she tried to get out of bed to go to the toilet and collapsed in a big heap on the floor.
Right.
Managed to get her back into bed, and she immediately fell asleep. I thought, I've got to do something. Now I have to do something. I can't just rely on the fact that the specialist has said she's okay, because she clearly isn't. I came downstairs and called 999, then went back up and told her what I'd done, at which time she told me that in no certain terms, if you've called an ambulance, I am going to bleep, 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 kill you.
Right.
To which I responded, if you can get out of bed, I'll let you.
Right.
Because I knew I was on safe ground, believe me. Ambulance crew were here in 4 minutes, absolutely fantastic. And you've got to remember, this is the middle of the COVID.
Yes.
But they got here, it was a mixed crew, a male-female crew. They arrived. I let them in and they said, okay, fine, we understand what's going on. I said, well, she's on the first floor. So they went, starting up to the first floor, as did I. And the first thing I heard was running water. Sorry. So it was heard, and I thought, I don't believe that she's doing what I think she's doing. And the lady paramedic said to me, she said, I think she's in the shower. And I said, yeah, I think so too. And I almost saw the ambulance crew look at me as if to say, you're winding us up. And clearly I wasn't. So they
very proud woman.
Oh, incredibly so. And so she was in the shower. She came out the shower, and I think there was a little bit of not disbelief, but I'm not sure we believe you. That she's good. And then fortunately, it sounds like a crap thing to say, but fortunately, as she turned, she fell.
Right.
But she couldn't get up, and the ambulance crew had seen that, so it was okay,
right.
fine.
They took her.
Yeah, so they managed to get her sat up and managed to get her dressed. Then, of course, she decided before she got in the ambulance she wanted to put her makeup on. That was another. It's like something out of a farce, but it wasn't. I went to the ambulance with her, and they said, no, we know because of COVID, you can't come. Oh, great. So they took her back to.
So she went. You couldn't go with her.
No. So I called Burton a couple of times, and they're very, very good. I mean, out of all of this, no criticism at all for any of the support I've had from either Burton or the other hospital, which we'll come to in a minute. So on a Friday afternoon late on, I get a call from the oncology unit at Burton saying, there's clearly something more than we can find here. We're going to move her. And I said, yeah, okay. So we're going to move her to the Derby Royal Derby, which has got one of the best oncology units in the country. But of course, I wasn't allowed to stay in Derby because of COVID. So,
right.
So no access at all. So I said to the kids and to her friends, look, don't all call the hospital. They're busy. They've got COVID. They've got this, that, and the other. Let me call the hospital twice a day. And then what I'll do is I'll relay whatever.
Right.
I'll do it completely.
And how were they coping?
Obviously massively concerned, particularly Danielle, because Danielle and her mum were really close.
Right.
But we decided that's the way we would do it. So there it was, 9 o'clock every morning and 6 o'clock every night, calls to the hospital. And what became apparent very quickly is that she was going downhill rapidly. We left a mobile phone with her, and every now and again you'd get a text message which read like Swahili or
right.
Serbo-Croat. It was just a random. I got good access to the doctors, so I'd speak to the doctors regularly and ask the obvious questions, how is she? And she was getting worse and worse and worse. They then thought that the cancer had caused lesions on her brain,
right?
Which had resulted in encephalitis. And I think I felt for the doctor, actually, because I must be the only person that she'd ever spoke to in Derbyshire that knew what encephalitis was.
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
Just explain what that is.
It's a swell that causes the brain to swell. And the only way they can test for encephalitis properly is a brain scan, but also then taking a lumbar puncture.
Right.
Well, when you've got someone who is completely confused and all over the place, trying to do a lumbar puncture is pretty damn difficult. On the 3rd, I think, 3rd of February, I think it was, I had the call that I think we'd all been expecting, but none of us really wanted. It was from the doctor, from the specialist, who said, we've had a team meeting this morning with everybody, neurosurgeons, cancer specialists, oncologists, the general medical team, and there is nothing more we can do for her medically. So we are withdrawing medical assistance, and we're going into an end-of-life support program.
At what point were you still hopeful?
I think because no one had ever said, realistically, I think when she was blue lighted into Burton, I think at that time, I think I'd actually bumped into one of her friends on the car park at Waitrose, and I said, I think we're in the end game, because I think deep down I knew that's where we were, but no one had ever said it. But again, not being able to see her in the hospital.
No, that must have been awful.
Yeah, we didn't know what state she was in physically.
Right. So when you got this call, what happened then?
So I got this call, and as I said to the doctor, I said, I'm now going to do the one thing that you hope I wouldn't. I'm now going to ask the big boy question, which is how long? And she said, when she first came to us, which was like 12 days earlier, 11, 12 days earlier, she said, we definitely thought this was going to be weeks, maybe months, but certainly no long-term outlook. But obviously, as we've been trying to get to the bottom of it, we weren't going to say that until we got to, which is quite right. I get that and I understand it. And she said, now, she said, this is days, if not weeks. Okay.
Right.
So then it fell to me to have that conversation with the kids and her friends. And her sisters, because a lot of these people until that point didn't know how serious she was, because she controlled the news agenda.
Very private.
And then on 6th of Feb, 3 days later, they got my number and also Danielle's number, and they reached Danielle and said, because of the situation we're now in with your mum, you can now visit. We put her in a side ward. You're going to have to wear masks, but please feel free to come. So Danny called me. She jumped in her car, I jumped in mine, and off to Derby we went at a high rate of knots. What greeted us when we got there was just unbelievably bad.
How would you describe, if you want to, if only you want to,
for a reason? No, it's so as I said, Pauline was no, she wasn't a big girl, but she was 10 stone, very curvy, very a beautiful girl, no doubt about it, very sharp. What greeted me was somebody that weighed, I'll say 6.5, 7 stone.
Right.
Incredibly badly bruised, where they'd tried to get a line into her, and she was having none of it, pulled that out. She didn't recognise either Danielle or me, but she wasn't communicating.
Danielle must have been
distraught. Yeah, she was. She was.
It was the first time she'd seen her, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and yeah. It didn't look. Her eyes were sunken, her cheeks were sunken. To say badly bruised, her hands were all twisted up. It was like seeing something out of a Tolkien movie.
Right.
I walked in and she pointed at me as if there was some recollection of, I know you, but I don't know why I know you. And we, whenever we'd been there and doctors would come, we'd ask the question, where does this go? And it was the one thing that you always think you would never say, but you do say it, which is that I wish it was soon. And for me to say it is one thing, for the kids to say it is something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where we got to.
Yeah.
So I went up on the 10th, on the 9th actually. I went up on the 9th, and I stayed all the way through the night, and it was a dreadful, dreadful experience. During a couple of times before I got there on the 9th, Danielle and Kim thought she'd gone. Her breathing got very shallow, and I saw that on the evening of the 9th. Sorry, on the evening of the 10th. Sorry, and I. A couple of times, you know, I thought she'd gone, and then she'd come back. And at one point, she came back with such a burst. She was breathing so quickly and so loudly. I actually tried to see if I could keep up with the breathing, see if I could breathe as fast,
Right.
and I couldn't. So there was clearly all sorts going on. On the morning of the 10th, Danielle came back to relieve me, but because of the night we'd had, or I'd had, I decided to stay with Danielle until Kim came. Kim and Ryan were both coming on that day because I think we all of us thought we were pretty much there. So Danielle came, then Kim came. I came away because I'd been at the hospital for about 30 hours. So I came back to get home and get showered and something to eat. And then I got back, got in, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was almost getting ready to go back to the hospital, and I got the call to say she'd gone. And that was difficult. Thankfully, Danielle and Kim were there, excuse me, and Ryan had just got there. So at least, you know, they saw. So that was that. And then you go through the why me, why us?
Yeah.
And then I very quickly got to something that had been bothering me, which is really what triggered. It's a long way to get to what triggered the call to you, but please bear with me. And I realised that the one thing that Pauline and I had always argued about, and it was probably the only thing, you know, we like all.
Because you were best friends.
Yeah, and you know, it was, as I said, strangely, we'd like all couples, you know, we'd had our little tiffs and our little fallouts and all that sort of stuff, as you do. We were very incredibly close. The one thing that we always argued about was she would not have her smear test.
Yeah, you explained this to me. Now, you know, the reason we are here talking about this is for this reason.
Absolutely.
And tell me why you think she didn't go for it.
You know, I think I said this to you before. I really don't understand it. You know, Pauline, I know it's invasive. And men don't have to go through it, thankfully. And I know that a lot of women don't like it. And the more I've looked at it and spoke to people since, it seems to be a generational thing. To me, it seems to be ladies of, you know, over 55 and over that just have this thing. But she was not a shy girl. She wasn't. You know, she was completely the opposite, I would have said. You know, she was very, I would say she was proud of her body, but she was. You know,
and she'd had children, so you know,
she wasn't even.
So it wasn't really that. Look, I'm of that age, 55 and over, and I have recently had, since we spoke, but just before we spoke, actually had a smear test, and I've always done it, and it's never been an issue. There was something deeper, I think, wasn't there, that you said that there was a reason why she didn't want to go in case what?
In case it was positive.
Yeah. So I mean, ignorance is bliss, but in this case,
that's right.
Can be fatal.
So if I find out that this is bad news, I'm going to have to go through, you know, whatever. But realistically, Tamsin, you know, you and I know each other reasonably well, so I can say these sort of things to you. It was probably that in the end killed her.
Yeah, because
the cancer killed her, of course it did. But if they would have found it,
yes.
They could have, you know, if they'd have found it 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we don't know how long she had it.
We know statistically that cervical cancer is more easily cured when it's
Absolutely.
found in its early stages, and it's curable.
Yeah.
We know that 850 people or more a year die, women obviously die from cervical cancer every year. That's over 2 a day.
Yeah.
And you know, this is preventable.
It is, and this is why I said to you, you know, and the reason for doing this is, I believe that with your network, because I know how powerful your network is, and and if we can get if by getting the message out that please, ladies, girls, have your smear test, because that way you will not have to go through what Pauline went through, which I
And
would
what
not.
you as a family have gone through.
And exactly.
And
but,
are going through, because this
yeah.
is still very raw, Tony. I mean,
Okay,
this is
yeah,
not,
no, it is.
you know, and it will be for a long time. And it's
Indeed it will, and indeed it is. But you know, I guess my message to the men is, if your wife, girlfriend, significant other puts up resistance, if you have to pick her up and carry her, get her there. And for ladies, and I actually know that since this has happened, a couple of ladies that were of the mindset that they didn't want to go have been.
right.
And and I think I said to you when we first spoke, was if by doing this we can save one life, it will have been worth it.
You know, if you look back and think as if you could change one thing, if you could have done something differently, what would you have done?
I would have been more insistent. I would, you know, Pauline made me incredibly happy.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to put that or to risk that, probably selfishly. And what I should have done was dug my heels in and go, sorry, you're going, you know, either you go or ultimately this is over.
Mm.
Because I know that if I'd have said that, I now know on reflection that if I'd have said that, she probably would have gone under sufferance and probably would have made my life hell for 2 weeks, but that would have been worth it.
Yes.
I think what I was trying to do was do the right thing by her, but I wasn't doing the right thing by her, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know, one can't look back and say, you know, if only I had done this. But you know, this is a message for other men, as you rightly say, and friends of women, of friends of each other. What should we be doing for each other is taking each other by the hand.
It's
and
remarkable.
Taking ourselves onto, you know, go with a partner, buddy up with a girlfriend and go together.
Yeah.
And that way you have support.
But the one thing I would say is one thing it's taught me. It's strange how these things teach you. But one thing it's taught me is I would never have got into a conversation with a lady, with a girl, even girls and ladies that I know well. You, for instance, I would never have got into a conversation about going to have your smear test. I just wouldn't. Since this has happened, believe me, I have. I absolutely have.
So that if there is an upside to this, if there could possibly, is that the impact that you are having on making a difference to other women, potentially saving people's lives.
Yeah, and it's not just me. You know, I know that Danielle in particular has almost gone on a crusade,
right,
on this. You know, and Kim, and one or two of the other of her close friends, Kelly next door, and Nikki, who she's also very close to, ladies of that age, are also now on this crusade of talking to other women and saying, look, this is what's happened in our life. For God's sake, get a test. If you've not been for a test, because you wouldn't, get a test booked. Message is very simple. To ladies, if you've been invited for a smear test, please go. If you haven't been for a smear test for whatever reason, please book a test and go. For all the men, make sure that you stay on top of it, that they do.
It is absolutely, and I would say, I'm just going to throw down a challenge to any woman of any age, is to just do it. Just do it. Come and tell us that you've done it. Encourage others and tell us your story about what you've done to encourage others to do the same. And let's just get this done, because it can save lives. And the misery around it, the sadness, the traumatic aspect of what's left behind with families, you know, is equally as devastating.
When someone like her has an impact on the family that she did, the mixed family, watching the impact as it rippled down, has been just dreadful.
Yes,
just dreadful. And it will be a while, I think, before that's rebuilt.
Yes, it will. It will. And you're a strong and courageous man. And she had you there with her all that time, and thank God she did. But I mean, Tony, you are very courageous to come on and tell your story, to tell Pauline's story. And she was clearly a vivacious, fun-loving, a gorgeous woman. And it's such a waste of life to have gone so early. And it's preventable. And that's the message we've got to get out, is it's preventable. So please go. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me and sharing intimate things, which is very difficult.
It is, and I'd reciprocate that by saying thank you for giving me the opportunity to use your platform, to use Raw Talk, to get this message out, because clearly your reach is much greater than mine. So it's a huge. I thank you for a huge favour.
Hey, I'm not doing anything but just sharing it. So bless you. Thank you, Tony, for sharing all of that, and see you soon.
Thank you, Tams.